there, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuk with Queen Bee Creations, and today we are not doing a craft per se. What we are doing is doing a little paint color mixing. One of the beauties of the DIY paint that I carry, the clay-based paint, is that it's really heavily pigmented. And that means they mix to create new colors fabulously. So I've had a request from a number of you to come up with some versions of some colors. So I'm going to do 4. And what I'm going to do is pull you in overhead, and I'm going to show you how I do this, how I play with this, so that you have the structure to be able to go and play on your own and create some new colors. Now, one of the things that I do is I just have this quick little color mix chart. So it's just on slightly stiffer paper, not cardstock, but just a little bit thicker than computer paper. And I have just done this up. You can just do it on little file cards, no big deal. But what I do is I show, this is, in this instance, this is Bohemian Blue and I think Cake Batter, as I'm looking at it in the screen. So Bohemian Blue and Cake Batter mixed 1 to 1. So I put the ratio. So I say Boho Blue, I say Cake Batter, mixed even parts creates this wonderful green. Now I added 2 parts of Cake Batter and it lightened it up. So I've got 1 part boho, which is very strong, 2 parts Cake Batter. Here I introduced another color. So I'm taking this one, which is the 2 to 1, mixing it kind of in a 1 to 1 ratio with crinoline to create this lovely green. Any of these colors along the way are equally as lovely. So I maintain those formulas even as I add another color. So I just have, this is what the final formula will be. I write it in, any notes in terms of colors or that kind of thing. So I'm going to use a process that I'm going to show you, and that's how I work it. So it's the same thing on this one, taking Kissing Booth and Cake Batter to create this kind of almost peachy pink. And then if I add again a second Cake Batter, so this is 1 to 1, this is 2 parts Cake Batter, 1 part Kissing Booth, which is very strong pigmented color, it starts to lighten up, but you can see that it's still in a little bit of that orangey pink. But then when we add to this mix, we add crinoline, so 1 part of this to 1 part crinoline, we get this beautiful, beautiful kind of mid-tone pink. And that's how I keep these, and I just 3-hole binder, and I keep those color charts together. So I have some blank ones. We're gonna be working here. All that I have is a stiff piece of acetate, and I just happen to have it over something that's white so that we could at least see the colors. And we're gonna mix up a couple of things, sort of a bit of a sunset orange terracotta kind of color. We'll do, what else did I think? Oh, a nice soft lavender, which is not right now in the lime. Well, we'll kind of see how it goes. We'll kind of go from there. So I'm going to take you overhead, and then we're going to start playing together. I love doing this, but the way that I'm going to show you is a really inexpensive way of doing it, because we're just going to be doing dabs of color. You're not taking big, half a can or anything. It's a great opportunity and way to be able to play easily with color, a way to be able to record it in just whatever way makes sense for you. Just always have at least a piece of paper, and you can scribble your notes about what colors they are on there, and then you have a record of it. Okay, I think that you can kind of see this. Now, the first thing that I wanted to do, and let me maybe grab one of my color mix cards so I can record this as I go, was I wanted to do kind of a soft lavender for you. So I'm going to take Marquee, just see which end is going to open for me. So Marquee is one of the two existing reds from DIY. And I'm going to, all I do is I take a fingerful. So we're going to take a dab of Marquee, and I have wet wipes off to the side so that I can clean off my finger as I go. So I'm taking Marquee and I'm taking Hey Sailor. Oh, if it'll open, there we go. And I'm going to, so here's how we would use the page. We would take, here's our Marquee, right? So that color we're adding to the top of our chart there. And then I'm going to take kind of an equal, oh, this needs a little stirring. It's getting a little thick here. So let me clean off my spoon. And kind of the same equal part of my blue. And then I'm just going to add that dab. So those are my two starting colors, and I'll fill in the names after. So to start with, I'm going to mix these. Now, if you follow your color wheel, then you know these are going to give you kind of, you know, a bit of a plum color. Now, you could add a white, or I'm going to add crinoline. So here's my kind of nondescript plum color here. Not a very pretty color in and of itself, but here's where we go. And we now add okay. So what I'm seeing here is it's a little bit more on the red tone. So my dab of Marquee was heavier than my dab of my blue. So I'm just equalizing it out. And you can see then that we now get into this really nice, soft kind of lavender color when we mix it in with that crinoline. I just add my extra dabs. And I'm thinking, let me just lighten that a bit. So now we're going in even paler, because this is two parts of this. So we're adding this plus one part to get that kind of shading, right? But, you know, you can kind of play a little bit and just say, okay, what if I add just a little bit more of the red? Where does that take me? And just kind of see how that goes. If it takes me into a shade that I want, then I would start to, you know, I might do a little dab over here and just make note that I added more red back in, you know, if that was a direction that I liked. But playing on the acetate gives me a lot of freedom to just start kind of layering my colors and seeing the direction that they go in, right? And it gives me that kind of a plus. That blue really made a mess. Okay, so get rid of those and get some clean baby wipes for the next one. And let's just kind of take a look here. So what I want is, you know, there's a lot of deep, rich greens in the Bohemian blue, in the DIY line. But very often, you know, what we're missing is something that's a little bit brighter. So this is Bohemian blue. So Bohemian blue is a very strong, deep, dark, rich teal color. I love Bohemian Blue. It's very pigmented, so it's very strong. And so we're going to take, and we're going to add a little bit of our mint chip to this. Okay, so let me just record my mint chip over here. So we've got that and mint chip. And together, just so that we see, take the opportunity, the two of them together gives me a beautiful shade here, right? But to take it up a notch, we're going to take a little bit of Queen Bee, which is this strong kind of golden yellow color. Get that onto my color chart, which is very thick in here. And when we start adding that in, we start getting into a very vibrant green. But if we double down on that yellow, it starts getting even a little bit more electric, right? We start, let me just even go more, so that we can take it into that much brighter green category, so that we can get colors that don't exist in the color palette, but that are, here, I'm just going to record that I did even more. And you can see, whoops, how much lighter that is. Okay, that's going to make a mess drying. There we go. And those, again, just kind of give me a range of colors that I might not have had otherwise. Let me just move this and flip this around so that we're a little bit back into camera territory here. Because we saw a little bit of the marquee and what it does and how wonderfully vibrant it is. Let me just record my marquee over to the side here. And then let's do our Queen Bee into this. Okay, so this is going to take it, yellow and red together, of course, we know makes orange, right, from our color wheel. Now this isn't a super bright yellow, so you can see that it's taking it into a little bit more into those terracotta lines, right? So if we're looking at roughly 50-50, takes us into a little bit more of that brick red sort of color. You can see that it's oranging out that original red. So if we add a little bit more of that yellow, that's more on my finger than I wanted. We're going to lighten that even more so that we take it into a little bit more of kind of almost like that sunset orange kind of look. See, we're moving into that kind of look. So the other thing that I wanted to show you is what happens if we introduce another neutral. So I'm just adding to my sheet. We're going to take some of that crinoline and we're going to lighten it. And we start to move into a little bit more of kind of a softer, peachy, almost terracotta kind of look. If I wanted to take it just a tinge more into terracotta, I could add just a hint of chocolate brown, but this ends up being just a really lovely, soft kind of peachy orange, which when we just use it on its own, look at that earthen color that we get. And starting from two very vibrant colors, right? Okay, it's like, get rid of all the all the messy pieces here, keeping my fingers clean. So let's try taking a bit of Kissing Booth. This is a strong pink color. Let me just see if we've got enough on the lid here. Okay, so there's my Kissing Booth. And let's try just adding a bit of mint chip to that. I don't know what we're gonna get. I'm just looking, kind of going, let's try. So there's our mint chip. And let's just kind of mix those two together. So we start getting this much lighter pink tone that's got the green, takes it in a slightly different direction. So if we decided, let me clean off a finger here, to add in some of our crinoline here, and we start to soften this out, look at the direction that pink takes us. So this combination starts to move us into that kind of a pink tone. And we could take that in any direction that we want to now, meaning that we could drop in even, let's say we wanted to make it a little bit more intense, we could then add in even something as strong as a Bohemian Blue. And we get this lovely kind of violet shade. And look how gorgeous that color is. If you decided to, oh, that's too deep, and you wanted to lighten it up to create something even softer, you can just add, I've got crinoline out, or you could go even into a pure white if you wanted or you needed. Let me just see what else we could mix up with what I've got hanging out here. Let's try, you know what? Let's try maybe starting with a little bit of Marquee. Let's just do this for fun. Let's do this instead. Let's do Hey Sailor and Queen Bee. So we've got a little bit of Hey Sailor. We're going to go into the green families here. So a little bit of Hey Sailor and a little bit of Queen Bee. And just know that this, well, let's do, instead of the Queen Bee, let's go into Cake Batter, which is a softer yellow. So you can see it's much softer, not as intense a mustard color. So it's going to give you much softer looking green tones. And that was a fair bit of that compared to the blue, if we're going 50-50 here. So see how that blue is pretty strong for that cake batter. So let's add another dab of this. So it starts taking you into those softer tones. Let me just record that over there. And clean fingers. I need some clean fingers here. And if I use this as a base, so let's see what happens if we add a little teeny tiny bit of our kissing booth now to that. So we're adding a completely different color family to it, but it's got a different basis of color happening for it, right? In terms of kind of that type of mauvey purple that you might get, so that even if we decide to say, okay, what happens to that if we lighten it up a little bit? Where does it take us? We get, you can see the difference here. This is much pinkier tone. This is a much more purpley grayed out kind of tone that we end up with. So you kind of start to see already how just the starting to play this way, you don't need to know a lot about color theory. And I think that's the biggest thing that I get from people, is that there's kind of going, okay, but I don't know how colors work together. I don't understand the color wheel. Or no, you don't have to if you're just doing the let's see how it goes. We're just kind of using the color cards to keep track as we go, so that when we hit something that we love, we don't lose it, that we don't miss out on a color that we end up thinking is just unbelievably beautiful. So even here, let's just see about just one more, because I'm now I'm in the mood. I love doing this. And let's take a little bit of our cake batter with that. Let's just dab that over my chart. And let's mix them together and see what kind of orange we get from that. So you can see that takes us in a completely different direction than the Queen Bee did, relative to the type or the quality or the color tone of that orange. So let's see what happens if we go into mixing some of our crinoline into it. That's our creamy tone. And you can see the difference. This tends to pull out a little bit more on the pinky side, a little bit more on the rosy side than this, which went more into the terracotta color. So, you know, if we were looking for that true terracotta, we need to stick in the tone with that Queen Bee, because we went much more into that rosy peach kind of color here, right? And then, oh, because they're just side by side, and that created a color I don't like at all. So it's like, that happens too. Now, if we wanted to intensify this, and we add a little bit of the Queen Bee into it, you can see how that starts to take us into a much more orangey tone than we had, right? So adding that into this gives us more of that orange kind of tone in there. This, my friends, is how you practice your color mixing. And you can get a lot of colors and come up with a lot of combinations that you absolutely love. You're going to come up with some that you absolutely hate, but you can come up with a lot that you love very quickly and very easily, and record along the way, so you're able to do it. Now, in the space of our time together, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sheets, but each has about 3 or 4 different colors on it. So, you know, when we started with the marquee and the cake batter, we end up with this kind of color. We add a little bit of taking this color and adding a little bit of crinoline, we get to here. We then add a little bit of Queen Bee, and it took it a little bit more orangey. So you can see that we've got those rough formulas. This one is 1-to-1 here. This one is this mix 1-to-1. And then this mix, 1-to-1 with Queen Bee, takes us to that. So we can roughly replicate all of those colors. Here we were playing with the Hay Sailor, with the cake batter, getting us to this beautiful color here. When we then added just a tinge of the fuchsia, the kissing booth to it, it deepens it to here, and then we're able to lighten it with the crinoline. That takes it a little bit more creamy. If we took it with just a pure white, it would have lightened up a little bit more. But you can see where we now are able to kind of replicate a lot of these colors. Here we're going that kissing booth and mint chip to get into this lovely, lovely color, which is perfect in and of itself. When we add a little bit of crinoline to it, we've lightened it. Just a touch of the boho takes it back into that purpley kind of base and makes such a difference. Doing the same mix with the Hay Sailor instead of the Bohemian Blue, which is a little more teal based, would switch this entirely. And so it's sometimes fun to just play doing exactly the same thing, switching out just one color. This, you can see, leads us into the terracottas, right? Starting with that marquee and the Queen Bee, and then starting to lighten it up a little bit with that crinoline and taking us into terracotta. Even though there's not a terracotta pre-mixed, doesn't mean you can't have it, right? And just from this standpoint, going into the true kind of marquee and boho, which is a little bit teal based, taking us into that deep, deep kind of rich purpley tone, but then a little bit of crinoline just lightens that up right away. This just mixed directly with crinoline took us over here. So you can see just keep going this way starts to make a difference. It's just the easiest way I find to not just be able to play with the colors, but to make sense of them afterwards, so that when you hit a color that you truly love, you're able to replicate it. You could make it again. You can get that approximation, which is what you want. So I'll be three-hole punching these. I'll be adding them to my mix. Oh, this was another one that we did, which took us into that kind of limey green, almost a chartreuse color, where we started with the Bohemian Blue and the mint chip together. And then we added in that Queen Bee to start to give it that yellow tone. So this starts to add more of the yellow, that brightness to it. I need to add my words to that one. And you can see that this can be a tremendous amount of fun, but because it's so pigmented, you can get into so many different color ranges and start really discovering for yourself. And, you know, apart from needing a lot of wet wipes, if you're doing it with the fingers, you know, this acetate, I'm just going to take over to the sink and wash off. Let me know if this was helpful to you, if it kind of gave you some structure to how you can play with color with whatever paint line that you are using, to be able to extend out the colors or to be able to add some shades into what you're doing. It's no paint line is going to have exactly the color that you're looking for, but you can create it. Hope this was helpful. Hit me up with questions. Let me know your thoughts. Definitely look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.